Hey fam, it's Natasha Rothwell. I wanted to tell you about my brand new show on Hulu called How to Die Alone. It asks the question, if your life flashes before your eyes, could you say that you really lived? We follow Melissa, the character I play, after a near-death experience awakens her to the fact that she'd never really been living. I hope you join us on this journey as we follow someone who's waking up to life for the first time. Stream How to Die Alone starting Friday, September 13th on Hulu.
Welcome to Haunting History, the podcast that reaches back into the past for the events that still haunt us today. Tales of true crime, mystery, and the macabre. And when we're lucky, the stories were history and the people who lived it and the paranormal meet. Now, who doesn't love a good ghost story, right? Welcome back to Haunting History Podcast. I'm your host, Kat.
I'm Haley.
And I'm Carrie.
And Haley, why don't you introduce who Carrie is and why we just had a third person pipe up right there?
Carrie is my cousin who currently lives in Wisconsin. And I have a lot going on. I have 2 jobs, all the things. So when I can't be here recording, cousin Carrie will be here recording instead.
And she's less of a skeptic than you are.
Yes.
Wouldn't you say, Carrie?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so people might miss Haley's stoic attitude towards anything I say, but we'll try and squeeze it all in this episode. So you get Haley, but you guys are going to switch off. We'll get Haley sometimes, we'll get Carrie sometimes. We'll go back and forth. The population of Circleview, Ohio. First of all, have you guys ever heard of the Circleview Letters?
No.
So neither of you even know what it pertains to other than what I texted you yesterday, Carrie?
Right.
Cool.
I don't know anything.
At all.
No.
The population of Circleview, Ohio in the 1970s was less than 14,000 people. Circleview was a small enough town that everyone knew everyone, or at least knew of everyone. It definitely wasn't a big enough place to hide or keep secrets. Located about 25 miles south of Columbus, the area was most famous for its water tower painted like a pumpkin in their pumpkin festival. However, the giant pumpkin took a backseat to something far more sinister. One day in March of 1977, Mary Gillespie, a school bus driver from Circleview, received a hand-addressed letter in the mail. Little did she know that that letter was going to change lives, instigate divorces, cause deaths, send a man to prison, a potentially innocent man to prison, and start a mystery that spanned decades. The letter was postmarked in Columbus, but had no signature or return address. Mary Gillespie, a pretty married mother of 2, received the following letter. Mrs. Gillespie, stay away from Macy. Don't lie when questioned about meeting him. I know where you live. I've been observing your house and know you have children. This is no joke. Please take it serious. Everyone concerned has been notified and everything will be over soon. So initially, Mary denied knowing what the letter implied or what it had to do with Gordon Macy, the school superintendent for the school district that she drove for. She decided to ignore the letter, assuming the person would disappear. Even though it was addressed to her and it mentioned someone she knew, she kind of thought, what the heck, this is weird. I'm not going to give it any credence or any power, and she ignored it. She was wrong to do that. Within days, she received another letter. This letter said, Lady, this is your last chance to report him. I know who you are. I know you're a pig, and I will prove it. Shame on you. Out of Ohio, a pig sneaks around and meets other women's husbands behind their backs. Only causes families, homes, and marriages to suffer. You are such a pig. I will prove it. Why doesn't he come to your rescue, or has he too much to lose? His wife, in which pigs like you take advantage of his $28,500 a year job, or his kickbacks. How's your little girl? Will she grow up to be just like you? I should mention she had a 11 or 12-year-old daughter at the time. Mary still decided to ignore the letter. She didn't contact anyone. She didn't make a fuss. And although she must have been a little worried, she did nothing at that moment. But then weeks later, her husband got the letter this time, and suddenly she couldn't ignore it anymore. It said, Mr. Gillespie, you're doing a lot for her. No one cares that much for anyone this day. Make him come to her rescue, but he won't. He's being awful good lately. He knows what he must do, but he won't. Make her admit the truth. Call the school board. His affairs must stop. Everyone will know soon. Think of yourself. You should catch them together and kill them both. It became very clear what the letter was implying. Both Mary Gillespie and Gordon Macy denied the affair. Initially, they all kept quiet, but the letters kept coming. Ron's letters continued to demand that he go to the school board with the information or risk being killed. Mary convinced her husband it had to be a prank and continued to deny any affairs. They hoped the letter writer would move on or get over it. However, soon additional threats arrived, warning that unless Mary terminated the affair, it would be publicized via CB radio and billboard advertisements. Can you imagine? That was a threat in the 70s that they're going to go on the CB. You don't know what a CB radio is?
No.
It's a citizen broadcast. It's the walkie-talkie type things they have in trucks.
Oh,
Have you ever
okay.
seen the
Like a
movie?
big box?
Yes. And
Okay.
like truckers still have them.
Yep.
I mean, even though they're cell phones. But back in Jeff always tells me that back in the 70s and early 80s, his dad had a CB radio set up at their house. And they would like talk to truck drivers all across the country and stuff. Like it was a big deal.
Yeah.
Like how now we're so jaded. We can talk to someone in China at any given time of the day. But back then it was a big deal that you were talking to someone. If you're sitting in your dining room in California and you were talking to a truck driver driving through Nebraska, like it
Right.
was a big deal. So people did that all the time. And so it's weird to read it now, but his threat was that he or she, we don't know who it was going to broadcast it on a CB radio that she was having an affair with the school superintendent. It was at this point that the Gillespies decided to tell their family. Now, they still haven't told the police, and they're still speaking amongst themselves. She's still denying the affair, and they decided to tell their friends. They were really close to her husband, Ron's sister, Karen, and her husband, Paul Freshauer. Speaking with the Freshauers, Mary said that she had a suspect in mind. She thought that it was David Longberry, a bus driver who had once made a pass at her. Maybe she thought Longberry was feeling jilted and wanted to taunt her. So it was agreed that Paul, her brother-in-law, would write the letter to Longberry to demonstrate that the Gillespies knew what he was doing and to stop immediately, which I'm still confused about, and it kind of comes into play later. The four of them, Mary Gillespie, her husband Ron Gillespie, his sister Karen, and her husband Paul are sitting around a table talking about the letters that they've both been getting. Some of them literally threatening to kill Ron if he doesn't pursue it. And the brother-in-law decides to write a letter. Like, why did the brother-in-law write the letter to this David Longberry? Why wasn't it her husband? Why wasn't it her? Like, why didn't she confront them? It's kind of weird, don't you think, that it was the brother-in-law deciding to write the letter?
Yeah. I wouldn't have even, I would have just gone to the cops right away. And I'm getting all these letters and they're telling me threatening things.
Yeah, and they're having the brother-in-law write the letter.
Yeah.
And then, so a couple weeks go by. There's no letters. The two couples started congratulating each other, saying they must have been right. The letter Paul had written had scared him off. But then suddenly the letter writer was back and sent another letter to Mary. This one said, Gillespie, you've had 2 weeks and done nothing. Admit the truth and inform the school board. If not, I will broadcast it on CB radios, posters, signs, and billboards until the truth comes out. Indecent signs started showing up around Circleview. But the thing is, the signs initially accused Mary, an adult, of having an affair with the superintendent. But the signs changed and started accusing Gordon Macy as having an affair with their 12-year-old daughter. So the dad, Ron Gillespie, had to get up every morning, drive around town, and tear down signs before their daughter or the townspeople saw them. So someone was hanging up signs all night, accusing.
And they still didn't go to the cops when that was happening.
This is when they finally got the cops involved. At some point, they were even working with the United States Postal Service to try and figure out when the letters are being delivered. But it gets bigger than this. The signs started showing up. Many of the signs accused Gordon Macy of having an affair with Ron and Mary's 12-year-old daughter. Ron woke up every morning, drove around, removed the signs before his daughter saw them. On August 19th, 1977, now this had started in March, Ron Gillespie received a telephone call. His wife was out of town. Mary had gone out of town with her sister-in-law, Karen. So they're very close to Ron's sister and her husband. She had left town. Ron was at home with the kids, and he got a phone call. To this day, no one knows who called him. All they know is that after he hung up, he had 2 kids, a 12-year-old daughter, and then they had a son. He told them that he knew who the letter writer was. He was going to confront him. He took his pistol and took off in his car. Later that day, his mangled automobile was found wrapped around a tree. Ron, 35, was found dead inside. An examination of his firearm revealed that it had been shot, but no casing was found nearby. He was actually laying on top of his gun. Police officially ruled Ron's death as an accident caused by alcohol. Investigators claimed that his blood alcohol concentration was approximately 1.5 times the legal driving limit at that time, which in the late 70s, the legal driving limit was a lot higher than it is now. So this means he was falling down drunk at this point.
Jeez.
No alcohol was found at the scene, and he hadn't been drinking before he left. And the thing is he wasn't a drinker. He didn't typically drink anyways. And he certainly wasn't drinking when he was left home with the kids. The kids would have known if he'd been drinking. And yet he was found with 1.5 times the legal limit. And he was laying on his gun, and his gun had been shot. Ron Gillespie's death threw his wife Mary and his brother-in-law Paul into chaos. At the time, Paul Freshour, the one who had written the letter, accused the sheriff of deliberately changing his story about Ron's death. Paul said the sheriff agreed with me that there was foul play, and then when I contacted him again, he changed his attitude completely. Some of this was undoubtedly due to the fact that the lone suspect in the case, still this David Longberry that they wrote the letter to, had passed a polygraph test. The pressure got to Mary. Her husband was now dead, and the letters didn't stop, and she had a confession to make. Guess what that confession was?
About the affair?
She was having the affair.
She really was having an affair.
Yeah.
So whoever was writing the letters knew she was having
Was
an affair.
spot on.
Like, was right the whole time. Right.
Hmm.
She claimed after that it didn't start until the letters started, but no one believed her, and no one believes her now. So whoever's writing the letters legitimately knows what's going on.
So then, was the stuff about the daughter correct? Or was that
No, I think that was, well, no, I
just,
mean,
like,
I'm
scare them, basically?
to make them come forward.
Okay.
But it gets really foggier than this. The mysteries surrounding the Circleville writer managed to dig up hidden secrets and tear other families apart. Paul and Karen Freshour divorced after Paul learned that Karen had cheated on him. Karen Freshour, Paul's wife, was reported to have had an affair with another man named Mike. So, Mary's having an affair with Greta Macy. Karen's having an affair with Mike. Mike also works with Paul Freshour. That's how she met him. She's having an affair with someone that works with her husband. The affair between Karen and Mike was one of the factors that contributed to the breakdown of Karen and Paul's marriage, ultimately leading to their divorce. The affair also played a role in the complicated dynamic surrounding the Circleview Letters. After learning of the affair, Paul was deeply hurt, and it added to the already immense pressure he was under due to the ongoing scandal with the letters. Now remember, he inserted himself in this problem, right? He's the one who wrote the letter. Plus, he was the one that was fighting with the sheriff about his brother-in-law drinking and wrapping his car on a tree. He didn't believe that happened. He believed his brother-in-law was murdered. All of this caused a bunch of speculation and gossip in the small town of Circleville, where the letters had already caused so much turmoil. Karen's affair with Mike was one of the personal details that came to light during the investigation and public scrutiny of the letters, adding another layer to this already complex and tragic event, right? Almost the whole town was receiving letters and notes by then. Over thousands of letters terrified the residents from 1977 to 1983. No one in Circleview was safe. The letters were characterized by a mixture of threats, accusations, and taunts. They were often filled with spelling and grammatical errors, written in a crude and angry tone. The writer frequently used capital letters for emphasis and made liberal use of exclamation marks to underscore the threats. The letters conveyed a sense of urgency and danger, often ending with warnings that something bad would happen if the recipients didn't comply with the writer's demands or reveal their secrets. The letter writer also targeted several residents with accusations and threats, causing widespread fear and anxiety throughout the small town. Most of the letters that were written to personal people are still personal, but some of the major players in the town started getting letters. The sheriff, Dwight Radcliffe, who had investigated the car crash, he was the primary investigator. He received multiple letters accusing him of incompetence in covering up crimes. The letter writer accused Radcliffe of failing to properly investigate Ron Gillespie's death, suggesting the sheriff was involved in a conspiracy to hide the truth. The letters also questioned the integrity of all his investigations, alleging that he was protecting guilty parties. Dr. Ray Carroll, the Pickaway County coroner, who ruled that Ron's death was an accident, was a prominent figure who started receiving letters too. The writer accused Dr. Carroll of having a history of sexually abusing children. These accusations were particularly damaging as they brought public scrutiny and suspicion on him. No one trusted anyone in the town anymore.
Yeah.
Everybody was getting letters, right? Like it literally affected every single person that they were getting letters accusing them of stuff. They were getting letters accusing other people of stuff. The entire little town.
Yeah. That's
And
crazy.
little towns talk. I mean, think
yeah.
about your little neighborhood. My little
Right.
neighborhood goes off. So I can't imagine an entire town. In addition to the key figures mentioned, many other residents of Circleview received letters accusing them of various offenses too, from infidelity to criminal activity. The letters were often filled with personal details, threats, and accusations that played on the fears and insecurities of the recipients. Some letters hinted at knowledge of the recipients' private lives, leading to believe that they were being watched. Others were more explicit in their threats, indicating the writer knew where the recipients lived and what they were doing. Several local politicians and public figures were also targeted. These letters accused them of corruption, mismanagement, and moral failings. The writer seemed intent on exposing what they believed were hidden secrets and wrongdoing. Some businesses and local institutions were not spared either. The writer sent letters that accused business owners of unethical practices, such as cheating customers or engaging in illegal activities. The school district where Gordon Macy worked also received letters accusing the administration of mishandling the situation with Mary Gillespie and other matters. And the written assault continued for Mary. It never stopped for Mary. Her husband's now dead. Her sister-in-law and brother-in-law are getting a messy, messy divorce because of another affair. And this is all happening in a small town. I can't imagine it would have been a reality show if it were 2024. The signs accusing Mary of all sorts of things also started reappearing around Circleview. Most were posted along Mary's daily bus route, and things reached a climax on February 7th, 1983. Now, this is 5 years later. This has been going on for 5 years. She's been getting letters, signs hanging around. On that day, Mary snapped. She stopped her bus and went to take down one of the offensive signs, and she turned out to be really lucky. Due to the angle at which she pulled it down, she was angry, so she pulled it like violently off the fence. The booby trap attached to it did not go off. The sign that Mary ripped down was rigged with a box containing a loaded pistol that was rigged to shoot when someone pulled on the sign. And she first of all, it didn't go off, thank God. But she also put it on her school bus. She picked up the whole thing, the box, the sign, put it all on her school bus, and all these kids were on there. And the whole time the thing was rigged to shoot anyone that came near it. Yeah. Once again, she called the police. They quickly discovered that someone had made a crude attempt to file off the gun's serial number. Police traced the gun to guess who? I bet you guys can't even guess.
I would say the sheriff.
Nope.
No guess.
It is her brother-in-law, Paul Freshour. The gun was registered to him. He said that the gun had went missing a few weeks before and denied having anything to do with it. The gun was the only solid lead that the police had available to them at the time. So they coerced Freshour into taking a handwriting test in which he had to copy some of the Circleview letters. Even if experts were able to prove that the handwriting was his, the investigation was criticized for the incorrect manner for administering the handwriting test in the first place. The sheriff was satisfied that Freshour was a Circleville letter writer, or that the handwriting was close enough at least. He arrested Paul Freshour for attempted murder. Following this improper test, in search of Paul's garage, Paul Freshour was charged with attempted murder. He went on trial on October 24th, 1983. Although he was never charged with writing the letters, they were used against him at the trial. Ultimately, Paul was convicted and given the maximum sentence of 7 to 25 years. Despite Freshour's conviction, the letters didn't stop. In fact, they continued to pour into Circleview even after he was imprisoned. This baffled authorities. First of all, Paul claims that gun had been, he didn't report it stolen. He just didn't know where it was. So he hadn't seen it in a few weeks. It disappeared, and it ends up in the box trying to kill Mary Gillespie. And remember, he's the first one. He wrote that letter, which was really none of his business to do. And he found out his wife was cheating on him with a guy from his work. So, he kind of inserted himself in this whole thing. And now he's being 1000% pulled in. The situation took an even stranger turn when Paul himself began receiving letters while he was in prison. The letters taunted him, saying, "When were you going to believe you aren't going to get out of there? I told you 2 years ago. When we set him up, they stay set up." This only fueled speculation that the real letter writer was still out there continuing this terrorizing of this small town. In the aftermath of Paul's imprisonment, Mary Gillespie attempted to move on with her life. Despite the turmoil that the letters had caused, she retained her job as a bus driver and continued to live in Circleview. The affair with Gordon Macy, which she had eventually admitted to, had begun prior to the letter's appearance, contrary to her earlier statements. However, the full truth of her relationship with Macy and his connection to the letters remains shrouded in mystery to this day. As for David Longberry, the man Mary initially accused of being the letter writer, was actually accused in 1999 of sexually assaulting an 11-year-old girl, fled from authorities, and ultimately took his own life to avoid prosecution. The tragic end only deepened the mystery surrounding his possible involvement in the Circleview Letters, though there's no definitive link to him. There was never any evidence that it was actually him, other than he hit on Mary one time. Paul Freshour, after serving a decade in prison, was released on parole in 1994. He maintained his innocence until his death in 2012, consistently claiming that he was framed and that the real Circleview letter writer was still at large. Freshour's insistence on his innocence, combined with the continuation of the letters during his imprisonment, has led people to believe that the true author was never caught. Over the years, numerous theories have emerged about who the real Circleview letter writer is. Some believe that it could have been multiple people working together, while others think it was a single individual with a deep knowledge of the town's residents. The fact that the letters continued even after Paul was in prison adds weight to the theory that he may not have been the author. Some even speculate that the writer could have been someone within the Gillespie or Freshour families, or another resident of Circleview who had a personal vendetta that no one knew about. And they make very good points, and you can find all the letters online. The letters are actually like screenshotted or posted online, and they are crude. Like instead of lose, like I read lose in that first, it was actually spelled loose. Things are misspelled. And Paul actually had his master's degree and was known for being really smart. So he would have been, for him to have written the letters, he would have been trying to sound uneducated because the letter writer came across as very uneducated.
Did all the letters come across like that, or just
Yes.
some of them?
All the letters were the same. They never determined that any letter was written by anybody else. They all appeared to have been written by the exact same person. The role of Karen Freshour, and this has always kind of confused me too. The role of Karen Freshour, Paul's ex-wife, in the overall narrative is kind of complex. Some have speculated that Karen might have had more involvement in the letter writing campaign than was ever proven. After the divorce, she moved into a trailer on Mary Gillespie's property, which fueled rumors and gossip within the town. She was having an affair. She was living with her sister-in-law who was having an affair. And the one husband is dead. The other one's going to prison. No one knows whether or not Karen had direct connection to the letters. Remains one of the unanswered questions, like if she got any letters. She did play a very significant role in the trial and conviction of her ex-husband. During the investigation trial, Karen's testimony was particularly damaging to Paul. She cooperated with authorities and provided testimony. Now, the police wanted to find who was writing these letters. It was terrorizing a small town. And a man was dead, right? So they wanted, for them, it fit in a little box that Paul would have been doing it. Because they found the letter writer, they found the guy with the gun, all that stuff. It would have made it easier for them. They couldn't tie him to the death of Ron Gillespie for whatever reason. But they were going to take whatever Karen said and run with it because they needed to show some kind of conviction to stop the letters, although it ultimately didn't. And Karen played into that. Karen cooperated with authorities, provided testimony that suggested that Paul had potential motive for the crimes. She claimed that Paul had become increasingly angry and controlling in their relationship, which was further complicated by their ongoing marital issues, including her affair. And one of the most critical pieces of evidence that Karen contributed was her allegation that Paul had written some of the letters. She provided samples of Paul's handwriting and claimed that the letters looked similar in the writing. This testimony, combined with controversial handwriting tests, had the authorities that's what linked them to Paul. She also insists that at one point when the letters were kind of flying around town, everybody was getting letters, that she found letters written, she claims, by Paul torn up and flushed in the toilet and they hadn't been flushed all the way down, but didn't pull them out, didn't show them to the police, just said she saw them. So Karen's cooperation with authorities helped establish a narrative that portrayed Paul as someone who might have been capable of attempting to harm Mary, leading to his conviction of the attempted murder related to the booby trap sign. While Karen's exact motivations remain unclear, her participation in the trial was pivotal to the case against Paul. Her testimony, along with the other circumstantial evidence presented, ultimately contributed to Paul Freshour's conviction and his lengthy prison sentence that followed. He ended up doing 10 years, by the way.
Oh, wow.
And was getting letters from the writer that whole time. Today, the Circleville letter writer remains unidentified. The case has become one of Ohio's most enduring mysteries, with numerous theories but no conclusive answers. Mary Gillespie, the primary target of the Circleview letters, continued to live in Circleview for some time after the events. Despite the trauma of the letters, the death of her husband Ron, and the exposure of her affair with Gordon Macy, Mary retained her job as a bus driver and continued her life in town. Like the others involved in the case, Mary has largely stayed out of the public spotlight, and in recent years, there's little known about her current situation. Karen Freshour and Gordon Macy have always remained out of public view, and nothing is known about their whereabouts. I do know that Gordon Macy ultimately got divorced himself. His wife was never considered a suspect, or if she was, it was just looked at her and decided it wasn't her. Paul, which kind of makes sense to me. Like, that's what started the whole thing. Paul Freshour served 10 years of his sentence before being released on parole in May of 94. Freshour continued to maintain his innocence until his death. And the letters just suddenly stopped out of the blue. Just as fast as they came in, they just stopped coming.
Weird.
Nobody knows who it was. But there's so many things online about like theories and stuff. Like with everything, there's theories. But none of the theories really kind of make sense. Where at the end of it, you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. There's no one, just that. I don't think it was Paul Freshour. It was someone in the town that had some kind of stake in the marriage of either Gordon Macy or Mary Gillespie, because that's where it started. It escalated and ended up terrorizing an entire town. Can you imagine? People were talking, did you hear this? Did you hear that? Did you hear this? Did you hear that? Like, it must have been insane.
Yeah.
And they were terrified because it was
like what's true and what's not at that point.
The fact that she was even having the affair is kind of what threw everything on its, The Circleview letters serve as a chilling reminder that some secrets in small towns are never fully buried, and the ghosts of past mysteries can linger long after the ink has dried. The final letter echoed the cryptic and taunting tone that had been characterized the correspondence for years. You have been warned. Don't think that it's over, because it isn't. You can't escape what's coming. Thank you for listening to this episode of Haunting History Podcast. We love hearing from you, so be sure to like, follow, and comment on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Haunting History Podcast. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to all your favorites.
Visit our website at hauntinghistorypodcast.com for more information on each episode, links to our Patreon page, and all of our social media platforms.
Until next time, I'm Kat.
I'm Haley.
Remember, the living are far scarier than any ghost.